Good to go.
Serious question tonight.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. This is the third budget workshop for FY21-22. Brandy, David, you going to kick it off?
Yes,
Kick it off.
I will be happy to get us started. This is the final calendared workshop in our 2021-2022 budget schedule. We've held two so far this year, and then we'll have two public hearings to actually adopt the final budget. The first one is going to take place on Tuesday, September 7th, here in the chambers at 5:01, and then the final budget will be adopted on Monday, September 20th, here in the chambers as well. There have been only one change to the budget since we submitted it to the board on July 14th. If you look at the final page of your agenda item or the workshop item, there's a budget amendment on there, and this was relating to a award we received from DEO for a county vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan. You'll be voting on this grant award tonight at the regular board meeting, so this was included in the budget. Other than that, the significance aspects of the budget as submitted to you in July, a proposed millage rate increase from 8 mills to 8.825, a proposed increase in the fire assessment rate for residential from 102 in the current fiscal year to $149. That includes a portion for capital component as well.
That also lowers commercial slightly.
Yes.
What's a new category for farm?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
It does lower some people.
Yes, it does. The significant amount of MSBU revenue does come from residential, and so that's why we're bringing that up. And then an increase in the solid waste assessment from 196 to 200, and then proposed sewer rate increase up to 15%, not to take effect until April of 2022. So other than that, we don't have anything else. This is your time for you to discuss amongst yourselves how you feel about this proposed budget, what you agree with, what you don't, and then if you can come to any consensus. We're not going to vote on anything tonight, but if you can give us some feedback so we know where to go from there.
Good deal. Right here. Very good.
That was fast.
So I pass this out, so we'll start with that. I just asked David to run a couple of additional options for us. I think we know that we're in a tough spot this year with increasing the salaries, with losing the ICE revenue. And so, fortunately, we've got some reserves, and so we've got a little time to come in for a landing. And I was just trying to maybe throw a couple more options that might be a little bit easier on our citizens this year. So what I asked him to do, when he prepared this sheet for us here, we had about $3.8 million in our revenue stabilization fund, and I know he's holding money back for the communication system, and there's other things we certainly don't want to catch ourselves short in case there's a storm or we need to do a match. But I asked him on the top line here, if we could throw the full amount that's in the stabilization fund, plus right now on the budget that we were given that was through June 30th, the sheriff's fund balance is required to have, I think it's like 2.3 million, and there's about 4 million. I know that's changed because I know there's expenses that happened since then, so I'm not under the illusion that there's millions of extra dollars sitting there, but I just wanted to kind of pull all of that into it and see if we could, maybe kick the can down the road, but certainly we don't want to kick it too far down the road and avoid having to do the inevitable. So the first option here is if we increase the millage rate to 8.4125 for this upcoming year. And I think, David, you jump in, but I think the main thing is looking at in the yellow boxes there, what we're doing in our reserves. And you can see for the first 3 years, we're still holding about $5.6 million. I don't particularly like the middle one, so I'm not even going to discuss it, but the bottom one takes the other approach, stays away from ad valorem altogether, and if we increase the PST to 8.5. We had a proposal to max out the PST to 10, but this is splitting the difference there and taking it to 8.5, and I think we could safely maintain our reserves still have a year or so to figure out if we're going to continue to receive growth, and we might have to increase it, but I think that gives us a little time to kind of split it, increase a little bit, but then evaluate what the market's doing and see if we need to take another increase later.
So you're saying that you like option one as opposed to the increase of the public service tax?
I think I like the public service tax better because we can stay away from people's homes, and it kind of spreads a little broader across the board.
But the public service tax is a very regressive tax. It hurts poor people more than it hurts the wealthy people. It's a basically, it's always been a regressive tax, and I can't support a public service tax.
Well, I hear you, but it also makes sure that everyone is paying.
Everybody is paying, okay.
So if I'm a homeowner, how explain that to me with regard to the public service tax?
Public service tax is on your utilities.
I understand that.
So everybody has to have utilities living here, okay? And your income, okay, if you're a low-income person, there's a basic amount you have to pay to live. You can't change that. Your public service tax hits all the basic necessities you need to live much harder for a poorer person than for a richer person. So somebody that's bought an expensive house, they pay more.
But that's not, there still has to be some contribution with regard to everybody.
They still paying 8%. Okay, it's just where we get this increase. And so I can't support a public
I
service.
just don't understand how the PSC to 8.5. Now, I talked to you about this months ago, and I thought the numbers we ran showed the PST could not make up the revenue we needed.
Well,
There's a difference here.
It doesn't. It
This
doesn't.
is
You're still pulling out of the revenue you're still pulling out of the revenue stabilization fund. In that scenario, you burn through all your revenue stabilization fund.
The whole 5.6.
At 4.5, which is, we actually have 5.5 in revenue stabilization now. $1 million of that we're going to carve out and hold on for the radio system. So that leaves a $4.5 million balance. We're going to burn through that. Now, this is basic assumption going into the next year, the next fiscal year, of an 8% growth. It could be higher. The growth could be higher than that. That's a low projection of growth. We would still burn 1.5 out of our reserve, revenue stabilization reserve, which is what this is for. We were intended for that. Then the next year, I actually step it down, the ad valorem down to 7%, and the PST growth down to 4%. And then lower those projections going on out, just to be on the conservative side. We'll burn up in 2023-24 fiscal year. We will burn through the revenue stabilization fund.
Was that the $3.5 million that you were talking about today, Brandy? The
$4.5 million.
4.5? So we'll go through every bit of that and not have none in the reserve at all?
Well,
That particular.
in revenue stabilization, then our reserves, our combined reserves with the sheriff's department and our reserves is $5.6 million. That would cause us to burn about 23-24, about $500,000, $450,000. Then 700,000, and then it should start stepping itself down to 550. Now, these projections, at that point in time, when it comes time to 23-24, is that right? 23-24, that's a decision point as to do we continue to burn into that, or how is the economy doing at that time? Are we still growing at a pace that's reasonable? That's the reason I projected. I'd rather project low than I had high, because I don't want to give a rosy picture. and it does give us time to say, okay, we either got to change gears or no, growth is going to catch it and we're good.
And that's, I think I like that better, because when I was telling Brandy, because I've worked on this budget and she's taught me a lot on it, I'm for the raises for the sheriff's office and for the fire department and for staff, but, people are having a hard time, and we're talking about going to 8.825 on top of going up on sewer, not water, sewer, and, everything. And I think, kind of like what Ralph said, eventually we might have to do that, but I think if we start out lower, see if growth catches us, and then we can readjust by the next year or the next. I know we're trying to, that we're trying to fix a problem that we needed to fix probably years ago, but, nobody knew that we were going to lose the contract, and I know Sheriff Harvey talked about it, I know Sheriff Miller's talked about it for years, and unfortunately, it's caused us to get where we're at today. And I don't, but I like going back to the 8.4, 125 versus the 8.8.
What's 4/10 of a mil on a $100,000 house?
4/10 of a mil?
That's different, 8.4 and 8.8. What's,
Hold on, I gotta get my spreadsheet out for that.
And I think we broke it down today was the average, what we said was the average cost for the everyday was today.
Yeah, it would be about $250 per year for somebody not on sewer, about twice that if you are on sewer, all the increases combined, roughly on a...
you've got a $100,000 house, Smith Creek.
It was $200,000 was the valuation we used just for...
What's the average?
Talking about poor people though, right, Chuck? They don't have $200,000 house.
225.
At $100,000, that means...
At a $100,000 house, their tax bill would be,
I'll just ask about the difference between 8.4 and 8.8.
883. Yeah,
all right, maybe I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
row 25. So if it's 100,000 taxable value,
Yeah.
current amount is 800, the proposed 8.825, 883.
Right.
So-
880 to
Not a big-
883.
There's not a windfall of savings from 8.4 to 8.8
No,
for an average.
no.
I was on the board when my reserve was down to, what, $65,000?
Mhm.
And
That's when I came in.
I'm a little leery about...
65,000, it was less than that. It was like,
You're leery in months, spending our reserve down that much just to kick the can down the road.
Well, this is the revenue stabilization fund. As I said, the danger part inside of this is like Randy's talking about is the yellow. That's when we start burning that, that's when it gets serious, real serious fast.
so if you look at that bottom line, these yellow blocks here, that shows the reserves that we're still gonna have. So my thinking is, if we did this for 1 year, and next year we see that we have good growth, we may say, okay, we're on track. If the economy tanks, values start falling, we start losing money, then we need to reevaluate that.
That 5.6 million in reserve, you need to look at as 3 months of operating for the sheriff's department and 3 months of operating for the county.
Right.
So we have to treat that like our little golden baby. We
Sure.
absolutely do not get into that.
I agree.
I'd rather go with what we've been proposed and look at it, and if next year, if we can lower the millage rate next year, when we see what things are doing.
I'll agree with that.
Just trying to be financially fiscal, conservative, to make sure we don't get ourselves in the...
Based on the 5-year projections that we ran is, we'll be able to turn the tide if you do what you're saying, Commissioner Merritt. The possibility of being 3 years out, then we'd be able to look at that if growth keeps up and the projections keep...
Just the number one on the first sheet that we have.
Well, that would have been, if you went to the full 8.825. These others, like I say, ifs and buts. But it does give us time to, because we are in unprecedented growth, and it would give us time to let the growth catch the budget and the budget catch the growth. So it is a little bit of a gamble, but as I said, there are trigger points in there. As long as we go into something eyes wide open, we're okay.
Now, we also have the option of going to 8.4 and increasing the PST to 8.5
Yes.
from 7%,
Yes,
not max it out.
that's right. That fixes the problem.
I personally like that option.
What is the difference in...
That's my scenario.
I mean, I like that option.
Me too.
Hold on, that's my first one. I got to unhide all that.
That takes less money out of the revenue stabilization.
Yes.
That's
It
right.
actually saves, the combination of the two is pretty daggone close to
To number one.
8.825, right?
Exactly.
As far as burning through reserves.
Yeah.
And
David, did-
I have a large power bill in my house, so I pay quite a bit in PST.
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, but we originally put in the PST to handle the disaster of 2010. It was supposed to be a temporary thing when we discussed it at the time. And the discussions here suggested it was going to be a temporary fix for
I'm the one that suggested it. I don't ever recall saying it was temporary. I mean, it was a revenue source other than property taxes. And I kind of agree with Ralph, because I know you don't share the same opinion, and that's fine, I respect that. But I think the PST, renters pay it, everybody pays it.
everybody pays ad valorem.
And the more energy you use, no, I mean, renters, they indirectly pay it, okay, through their rent. But what I'm saying is, it's also a consumption tax. So somebody like Eugene that has solar panels, he might pay nothing on the PST. And I know that, Charlie, for example, in Smith Creek, his power bill's $50 a month. My power bill's $350 a month, so I'm gonna pay a lot more than somebody that conserves energy.
Well, I mean, if y'all are against regressive, you're gonna have to quit talking about impact fees.
Well, I'm with-
There is nothing more regressive than that. Okay? That's not true.
This is a budget workshop.
Between the PST and going down from the 8.8, which is gonna be better on the taxpayers.
Across the board.
Across the board.
Increase millage to 8.415125 and increase PST to 8.5.
And that's gonna be better.
And St. Mark's and South Choppy pays what in PST? 10%,
What's Leon County rate?
200%.
Yeah.
Well, that's 10% as well, yeah. We're about the only county that's not maxed out. So.
And it depends on how you're defining better. If you're saying which is gonna cost the least money to the taxpayer, well, they're saying the combination of the two is certainly a good option, and it preserves the revenue stabilization fund, and so we've got that rainy day. But it's gonna cost more than that third option there.
Depends on which citizen you're talking about. If
Exactly.
you use a lot of power,
That's true.
it's gonna cost you more than somebody that doesn't.
I know that you can't just go through all your reserves and all of a sudden something happens.
No,
That makes no sense at all.
Right, and I wouldn't want that either.
So, I mean, you were down to less than 65,000 before, and if I'm not mistaken, at the time, I think Sheriff Harvey had a reserve that he gave money to the county. Back then, I don't remember what that number was, but, I mean, we can't knock out our reserves and not have anything in reserves, and I'm definitely not for...
65,000.
Yeah, okay, with 6,500, so you definitely can't do that, I understand that part of it. I just, with going up on everything on top of the millage rate, going to 8.825, sewer and everything, that's just a lot at one time. So I would like to come to an area, a happy medium, where we're not hurting the taxpayers as bad.
Well, you're going to have to say that everybody's paying the same, you're paying the same amount of money, just different pot.
Who pays for it?
Okay. And that's, so you can't, it's all hurting somebody, okay? And, people make a choice about their homes, how much they're going to pay on their taxes. That's when that kind of determines how much they're going to spend on their homes. And they made that choice. So that's what the ad valorem taxes cut, taxes.
Here's some numbers, and this is from Florida Tax Watch. So the PST right now in Wakulla, per capita, averages about $44.53. Now, per year. That's per capita, per person, $44.53. Now, keep in mind that some people have a high electric bill, some people have a low electric bill, so that's just the per capita average, $44.83. So if we increase it to 8.5, whether it be this third option I proposed or the option on there, that's the combination of the two, that's going to go up about 21%. That's going to go up about $8 per capita, per year. Okay, so right now, in Wakulla, about $581 per capita for property tax levy. Important for the public to know out there, out of 67 counties, we rank number 59. So we're very low, and the PST, we're a little higher, but like I said earlier, to me, it spreads it a little broader across the board, so everybody's paying. There are some people that don't pay any property taxes directly. Yeah, it might be through the rent, but if they own a mobile home that's below the homestead exemption, they're not paying it, period. If they own an older home that's below the homestead exemption, they're not paying any ad valorem taxes. And so PST helps spread that out.
So if we go to this 8.425, we still keep the 5.6 million down here?
You're if you go with the combination of the 8.4125 ad valorem and the 8.5 increase in the PST, you don't dip into our regular reserves whatsoever, and you burn 3 million of the 5.5 million in the revenue stabilization fund.
Well, sir, and we still got $1 million set away for the revenue.
That's right. That gives us $1 million set away.
We gotta remember too, people, we've all heard it, you gotta give law enforcement a raise, you gotta give them more money. This is how you gotta do it. This is it. Not free.
It's gonna cost.
You gotta raise the money. Law enforcement raises. And we're also squaring up lots of people's salaries.
We're 24% below market right now in our county.
And we just lost,
You got something there?
we just lost the ICE money that was subsidizing the military and has been doing so for years.
And fortunately, we've been weaning off of it. We would be in a mess right now.
We'd be in a bad mess if we hadn't tried to take care of it.
We've been in a real bad mess.
Yeah. I'm not going to enter into the debate of how to get there, other than the reserve side. I would not recommend eating into any of the general fund or sheriff reserves. The revenue stabilization fund is free money. Spend it accordingly and help eat into it. Not free, but, well, it's easier to move around. Yeah. We didn't tax our own people.
He didn't pay it.
And we didn't pay it, so however you look at that.
That's what this 8.4 does, right? It uses that money and keeps our sheriff's...
Correct. Yeah. And you still have $1.5 million left over under that fourth scenario.
Let's go into 8.4 mils without the PST increase? Because I think we're not talking about the same thing.
We're talking about the 8.4 and ad valorem and 8.5 on
But one of Ralph's options is just 8.4125 with no increase in the PST.
And that eats into the general fund every year. Both of those.
I don't want to do that.
It could eat the general.
But it's several years into the future, and we could reevaluate.
We first had to burn through the whole 5.6, number one.
4.5, because you got to save $1 million for your radio.
But that's money we could otherwise use for something else, right?
That's right.
We could use, any capital project we wanted, we could use that money for that.
That's correct.
So why not do this for the first year and then we reevaluate it?
I mean, that's kind of what I was proposing, but I'm not going to follow my word on this. It's just that one of those two options is going to minimize what we're passing on to the taxpayers.
Well, my personal,
We might have to pass it on to them a year from now, or 2 years from now.
I'd rather make that decision then than right this minute.
to make somebody mad, just do it once and not every year. Now, so I support either the 8.8 now or the 8.4 plus the PST.
I'll support the 8.8.
Either one gets where I'm happy, because, again, I've seen this in hard times, and I'd rather keep that revenue stabilization money. Like I said, we can use it for grant match, for example. So we have a good grant, right, Greg?
Well, still, even at the, and you're right, that is a good option, the dual, the both of them, but you still burn through some of your revenue stabilization, which that's what it's for.
We also do it with the 8.8. Yeah, I understand that. We don't burn through a lot of it, right?
That's right, you don't burn through it,
But at the 8.8, we still burn through revenue stabilization also, right? Just about as close to the same amount. Looks like $500,000.
that's right.
So I'm fine with either one. My personal preference would be the combination, but again, I'm not going to throw my sucker in this dirt over it, so.
Chairman, one final thing, and I know that we can zig and zag a couple of years down the road, but assuming that this stagnant, in 5 years, you won't need $6 million in cash reserve, you're going to need $7 million, because both the sheriff's budget and the general fund are going to grow. Therefore, the reserve has to grow as well. So your target in 5 years is $7 million, not 5 or 6. And so as you eat into that, you're getting further away from that number. And the unknown is what growth will be in property values. I've seen projections it's going to be 9% over the next 12 months. David estimated 8, I think, on the first one. That's probably good. That's probably realistic, but who knows? Everything could tank, and it might be 2%, Yep.
But, and if I may just add one last thing is on what Greg and probably Brandy's thinking here, is I think and I agree that we can, these other five, I think we're going to grow well enough, and that's a big thing, but we've gotten ourselves and kept ourselves in good shape by going ahead and every time when we come up with these things by saying, okay, here's what we need to do, and we went ahead and did it. But also we, on the opposite side of that, we said, okay, we're doing good. We've got our reserves built up. We're doing good. We're going to reduce our ad valorem, and we've done that.
We have, yeah.
So if we continue, it's a hard decision. At the end of the day, it's better for everybody if we make that hard decision, get it over with and done, and then if things do pick up better, we pull back on the ad valorem tax and keep your PST high and pull back on your.
Keep in my mind, is we're taking a big hit with the raises for law enforcement, which are deserved, and raises for our people, and losing the ICE money. Two very important, very important, and we got to fill that hole. Let's fill the hole with the sheriff's department, right, Jan? Which has existed for years, and I said just pull the prickly pear out of our foot now, get it over with, and
So you're going with 1 or first page, 4 on the first page, or is this page completely gone now?
No, that page.
Rouse pages.
Rouse page is history.
Y'all can talk about all you want to, but I would prefer just to go ahead and get it over with, either by the PST.
Either by number 1 or a combination of both.
Correct. Either option 1 or 4. And both of those don't touch our general fund reserve, and they take about the same amount out of our revenue stabilization. And how much do they burn out of the revenue stabilization, roughly?
The number 1 burns
2.6,
and then the other one, 2.5, and the other one burns about 3.
3 million. So that leaves us down to 2.
When Jared's done, this is done.
And Jared and everybody we're fixed.
Everybody's countywide, all
Countywide,
staff, we've taken into account the salary study.
Yes.
Don't say it
Yes.
yourself.
Well, at some point, I am aware that the sheriff's going to need additional deputies, so at existing service levels, yes, we're finished. When we need to increase services, we're going to have to address this again.
That's why if we go ahead and do whatever increases we're going to do now, we might come back in 5 years and say, hey, our population has went up, they need another shift.
Come down.
It could be 2 years, it could be next year.
Or we might just leave the millage rate where it is, and that at the time that it increased, because I don't like going up and down and up and down and up and down. And
Well, that will determine is all of our staffing, not just the sheriff's department, but, if all staffing, as we grow, yes, we may have to. But we got to see how that growth goes.
so Ralph, are you going to fall on your sword for the soft landing? Or?
No, I'm just throwing other options out there.
And I appreciate that.
I've had people come to me and say, do we absolutely have to raise taxes this year, assuming we don't cut anything? Obviously, if you cut, but the numbers we're talking about, you're not talking about doing cuts across the board. You're talking about pruning parts of the tree off in order to get to these kind of numbers. So a cut, to me, is not really realistic. So my answer was, no, we could absolutely keep everything the way it is, but we're going to dangerously burn through our reserves. And I don't think that's smart for anybody.
Good analogy is a household, could you get by without getting a raise yet if you burn through your 401k? Sure.
Right.
And then when it's out, there you are.
I think that puts us at risk if we did that. Now, we'd have a year or two, and so I was just trying to soften that and maybe kick that can 1 or 2 more years down the road, and then we can...
I saw a lot of that kicking back in my day. And I'd rather not if we can help.
Yeah.
Because it usually didn't work out very good.
Yeah. And I hope that, we got folks that are for growth, folks that are against growth, but growth helps, if we got more growth and more money coming in, it's going to make things easier, make it easier for us to evaluate that.
Commercial, is going to be
Well, we need the commercial, because we lose money on residential growth. That's just the way it works.
The Publix is going to pay a lot of...
Publix is going to pay a lot, and it's going to have a lot of...
What's the other tax they pay?
We wouldn't have Publix without the residential growth.
Don't they pay a tax inventory?
You got to have the residential have growth.
Like a franchise?
No, the tax on equipment, what is that called? Personal property, thank you.
And the only growth component of anything that we're projecting this year is the additional firemen. That's it.
One additional shift.
One additional shift. That's the only thing in this whole budget and all these increases, that's the only thing that's being increased due to growth.
Other than
But that's paid for.
cost of living, mostly with insurance.
Other than cost of living and stuff like that, but growth, that's the only thing that's due to that.
Yeah.
And like, we didn't put any new sheriffs on the road this year?
We do that right this year, no, sir.
I've already been made aware that they're gonna need more deputies at some point in the relatively near future. So I think we'll set the millage rate where it needs to be, and whatever extra growth, well, we gotta have increase in level of service to get more people.
Well, and hopefully this helps the sheriff stop losing deputies, get that salary a little more conducive to our fellow counties, and so they're picking off.
I don't know if we get a consensus on the method. It sounds like we all kind of agree on what needs to be done, but how to do it. I know what Chuck wants. He made that clear.
I'm gonna put it on the Avalon and let's go on. So,
I can handle that too, if that's what it takes. I'd prefer the combination, but
I think I'd prefer the combination. Me too, because I think I just see where it makes better sense, and we're not going through so much money of our reserves, but I mean, you're talking about,
It's $500,000 at the end of the day in 5 years.
they're about the same.
And so,
Just
but it is one of those things that everybody gets to participate if you are going to participate.
and when we said 8.825, that was about $42 a month, if we went what we talked about today.
It depends on the taxable value, but we look at a $200,000 roughly, and the annual increase across everything was $250.
Assuming they were on sewer?
Assuming they were not.
All in sewer.
Not on sewer. Not on sewer, it's about 500.
So anyway, I think we got an idea.
What's your idea?
Well, no, I think we got consensus.
Understands our idea.
Yeah, what is the consensus?
I think the consensus is from not counting votes, but I would say it's the combination of the millage increase to 8.4125 and the PST increase to 8.5. I think you and you're optional. I know where Commissioner Gass is. He's that, but I think the rest of you are flexible on the dual.
Just anecdotally, Chuck, a few years ago, there was an error in the way the PST was collected, and it actually went up significantly on people's power bills. Nobody said a word.
nobody notices the PST, that's why, but they do notice their property taxes, and that's, I want them to know how much they're paying for what they're getting, and the PST kind of just disappears into the background and nobody notices it, and so a lot of politicians like it because nobody pays attention to it.
Hey, Randy was the only one that was smart enough to figure out the fuel surtax of that.
So what is the average anyway? You said most of them 10%.
Like $1 million a year? PST?
Yeah. Let's see here. So we're 59 out of, what was it? No, on the PST, we're actually number 17. We're below the statewide average. Statewide average is $61.52 per capita. We're at $44.53. If you were in Broward County, $97.56. So they're twice what we are.
South Chavez probably about $100.
So our PST is higher than average, and our millage...
No,
Most counties
lower.
levy the PST.
Lower than statewide.
Most counties cannot levy the PST, you have to be a charter county.
Municipalities can.
All cities and only charter counties. So it's hard to compare PST to county.
All 67 listed, so how does that, is it levied through statute?
The public services tax is only available to charter counties and cities.
Say in that county, for example, maybe that's why we're so skewed, because
A municipality could charge it.
A city can, yes.
so you've got a big county and then like one municipality, and their per capita is going to be real low.
Yeah.
Because the whole county can't charge it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I had suggested, see if we could put all the PST at one time, but that didn't work. But, I mean, we got rid of the exemption, that paid for 3 deputies, right, Jared? A couple of years ago.
So we're definitely below the statewide average on that.
And we got rid of the exemptions, we put that increase on the backs of the poorest. Okay, too. Well, I understand that, Randy, but this is, again, they're putting in this increase on the backs of the poorest. And that's,
So it's taxing cigarettes, right? That means we shouldn't tax cigarettes.
no.
Isn't that right?
Taxing cigarettes is a behavior.
Doesn't that, I mean, but doesn't that, it disproportionately charges the poor, though, is that correct? Cigarette taxes?
If they're going to make the claim that those poor smoke more than,
No, I'm making a claim, I think it's a fact, that I'm getting a little bit off here, we got a whole hour ago.
Great.
Cigarette taxes
25 minutes.
disproportionately affect low-income people, that's the truth.
more low-income people smoke.
So,
There are more low-income people, so that's...
all they gotta do is quit smoking and they can pay a PST.
All right, we good? We're ready to call John up for his
Yeah.
presentation?
Great idea.
Come on up, John. Well, thank you for allowing our senior community to talk to you today. I'll be a little bit lighter fare than what you just went through, so anyway, here we go. Wakulla Senior Citizens Council Board of Directors is currently overseeing the operations for the Wakulla Senior Center now. Just as a refresher, the center currently runs a number of programs and services for our county residents of all ages. Meals on Wheels are purchased with the help of grant funds delivered via volunteers using their own vehicles. Meals at the center are provided for lunch 4 days a week, along with entertainment, crafts, bingo, exercise classes, etc. In-home care services are provided, keeping our seniors more independent for a little bit longer. We facilitate the emergency home energy assistance for the elderly program for our seniors. Wakulla's transportation services are provided for the disadvantaged for shopping, medical appointments, jobs, and education 5 days a week, along with dialysis runs on Saturdays as needed. We provide before school and after school child care programs for about 150 students for our elementary schools. We may be the largest child care program in the county. We make telephone calls verifying client well-being and identifying immediate needs such as food, medical supplies, transportation, even pet food, so they don't share the meal with their pet. We operate the thrift store and sock shopping with volunteer help. In the past, we've been able to provide services to our seniors that exceeded our grant allotments using excess funds from other counties that didn't use all of their funds. Those practices have pretty much dried up as federal and state grant funds have dwindled. We do try to actively fundraise when we can. It's not a good budget foundation. Our United Way allotment has decreased from about $51,000 a year that we used to get back in 2013 and 14 to $12,000 last year. And from what we understand, this year we're going to get $10,000 from
Why
it.
is that, John? Why the...
Just, I hate to get into that, but they've reassessed priorities with how they're spending the United Way money this year in Tallahassee, and that's where the lion's share of it goes. And it's going in other directions than to other needs. So can donors still allocate that it goes to their specific county, like in the past? Well, it's supposed to. I'm really not sure. That's the way it used to be, and I used to make donations that way. Yeah. But then it seems like that kind of got off the chart a little bit, and I'm really not sure, even if you put that on your check, if it actually comes to Wakulla County. And I think again, I can't say yes or no. I'm not positive. We probably got more than was allocated in, and so that's probably the situation that maybe you could still do that, but we're not getting the share from the whole pool like we were, or as much of it. A lot of it is being spent in Tallahassee in other ways than how they used to use the money.
The bottom line is they went to the Alice method for the whole entire Big Bend region. And so, yes, you can check Wakulla Senior Center on the form if you want to, but there's not an entity anymore. There is a county or a space that you choose. Mental health, homeless. Randy, we're not talking about that tonight. Let's let John get through his thing, and I'll give you the acronym in a minute, but it's long.
All right.
Okay.
So it's an acronym.
It's an acronym.
Okay.
Low income, I'll think of it while he's talking.
Just say it's an acronym, that's all.
I did, thank you. Go, John.
Acronyms always confuse me. Anyway, our increased costs in food, gasoline, utilities, insurance, maintenance on vehicles and facilities is constant, as you well know, and as you're going through this process right here today. Something you have to go through every year. It's just not something you can't stop. Our county's rapid growth and the need for services we provide has also increased. Both of these factors, increasing costs and decreasing revenue streams, are affecting our ability to operate. Our board of directors has worked with our executive director to cut salary costs by outsourcing and consolidation. Carr, Riggs & Ingram CPAs have been contracted to do all of our accounting and payroll now and to produce our 990 tax forms at the end of the year. And by doing this, we cut all of our financial expenditure costs in half from what was being done with the prior administration. We've also cut down on the number of our staff members. We're currently working with another CPA firm, Provis Gray, that has completed our first board audit for 2020. And as far as we know, it's the first full audit that's ever been completed by the Wakulla Senior Citizens Council. So when you review this work, please recall, y'all got, I think, sent a copy of it today. And when you review it, please understand that we assumed the operations in July of last year, so we were only there for half of the audit period, if you will. But anyway, our volunteer board, when we changed the way we were doing things, we decided to add a treasurer to our board. We didn't even have a treasurer before. We had a secretary-treasurer, not a full-fledged treasurer. And now we do have a full-fledged treasurer. It's Jim Davis here with us. He's also a CPA. So I think we've definitely stepped up our financial acumen for our board. The board is working to establish a capital campaign to help endow future needs and other ideas to help fund our future. The Board of County Commissioners has budgeted $69,000 for about 10 years or so to help with our operations, and part of it is for general revenue and part of it's for transportation. But it's the only government funding that the senior center receives that hasn't been cut, and we thank y'all for that. But we currently provide about 100 lunchtime meals a week. We've had to cut that down from what we normally did, which is about 150. But the transportation grants we receive from state and federal agencies only cover part of the salaries for administrative costs. They cover none of the costs of gas, maintenance, and repairs to the fleet. And just some examples here. We get grants when we get new buses, but they're not fully funded grants. The last two buses we bought were through Shirley Chisholm grant, something like that. We had to pay 10% of the cost of the grant. Well, that cost us $15,000 in the last 2 years in unreimbursable expenses. Not huge numbers, but for us over there, they are pretty big numbers. They're hard to deal with. So anyway, we continually try to upgrade our fleet for the safety and protection of our citizens. We actually used spaghetti dinner money last year to put backup cameras on some of our older buses. We're working with the Appalachian Regional Planning Council to consider expanding our transportation options for our citizens as our transportation grant has been extended for another 5 years. The center would also like to expand other services at the center, such as a dementia respite care facility. As our county grows, the demand for all services, including hours, also grow. So with this in mind, the Senior Citizens Council respectfully requests that you consider the funding for the upcoming fiscal year of $85,000. We also ask that you consider, and this is probably something to get together on later, some way to index as inflation goes up every year, and as we grow and increased services are required, some way to kind of try to sort that out in a logical manner every year instead of having to come back and take a shot in the dark at it like we're sometimes getting. Pardon me? So,
Spaghetti dinners.
more spaghetti dinners. So John, I see 85,000 in the budget, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you want to bump it to 100.
Now.
I'll pass the close.
Baby steps.
So anyway, but none of the grants that we receive from state, federal, or from any outside source are intended to fully fund what we're doing over there. They all, and they tell you, I hear again and again, they all expect local government and fundraising and local community to fill in the gaps, and we try to do that. That's what I tried to kind of hit on here today. So. And again, I want to thank you for allowing us this time before you today. You now have a copy of our audit for 2020. You also have a 6-month income and expense report for 2021. So as you go forward, if you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to try to answer them. If you got any questions now, financially, I got Jim over here to take care of the tough stuff.
Any questions? Transportation Disadvantage Program, right? Y'all want to bid on that?
We've already been awarded that, and it was actually treated more in days of yore as a senior citizens facility, if you will, but that was not what they want. That's what Appalachian Regional Planning Council wants. They want it to be more for disadvantaged people throughout the county, and that's probably one reason why we got it awarded to us again this year, because we did reach out to them and we did say that we were willing to expand beyond just serving seniors, because that's what it used to do.
Another question. Why is the senior center providing child care? Y'all making money at that, or are you...
Yes, we do. It helps pay for other services.
People often ask, you know...
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do everything we can to raise what money we can to be as self-sufficient as we possibly can be. And a couple of these other ideas that we're kicking around, I've talked with David about, we don't really need to talk about them now, but that long-term could have a big effect on the center. But but we're not there yet.
And when John says Appalachian Regional, he is referring to transportation disadvantaged. And also to let you know, ALICE, an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed.
Very impressed.
You're welcome.
Google's right to told us that. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to all your volunteers that keep this thing flowing and service to our community.
Four other board members showed up today, along with our director, Sandy McDaniel.
Nice. Well, we've got about 13 minutes left. Any staff, any public like to speak
out there.
Come on up, Eugene. If you will, fill out a speaker card when you're done.
I didn't know we could get a speaker card.
There's a lot of things I could comment, but I'm just going to take this to one thing you didn't mention, and I'm just curious why not. Cats. You're increasing the proposed residential sewer rate by 15%, and I have two questions on that. Is why do you need to increase it? And if you do need to increase it, why didn't you increase the connection fee more than $200? In other words, I guess what I'm asking, is this increase necessary because you're going to have to build future infrastructure, or is there some kind of base?
There's a rate study, Eugene, that answers all those questions. It separates out access charges from... What we're trying to do is correct what we've been doing in the past. The user fees now are going to pay to start replacing equipment also, which is never done in the past. But anyway, this rate study we just had done, I think if you want to read it, it's a very thorough read.
Okay, even if I read it, so the 15% increase is just to pay for infrastructure we have existing. Is that correct?
That is, the 15% pays for the increase, pays for the existing infrastructure that we have, as well as gives us the ability, which we're going to use that for infrastructure maintenance, but gives us the ability to have coverage of our existing loans.
Okay. And then, supposed to be doing in the past,
That's right, which will be used,
as required by U.S.
will be used for lift station replacement. We won't have to have lift station replacement money anyway, but we're going to use that as that purpose. So it's a dual purpose.
Okay, and I'm good with that. And then now that you've increased the connection fee to, I think it's 5,000 and some change.
4,050.
That's what, is that what the increase is? You're increasing by $200.
$200. That's what the math, that's what the math says, yes.
Will that cover new infrastructure?
That covers what we'll be responsible for paying in the future, yes.
And that way, myself as a landowner that's been here, I'm not having to pay for, not unless you connect the sewer.
That's right, not, absolutely not.
But is Smith Creek's gonna pay this?
And then how about everybody that's paying the higher utility bill and the increased millage rate, am I paying for new infrastructure with some of that, or is that just all for, like Randy, you keep saying people hate taxes. I'm all for taxes that give the raises that you're talking about. I'm not wanting to have my money go to build new infrastructure I don't need.
Ad valorem tax, once it sales tax, yes, pays for infrastructure. Ad valorem taxes typically are
The only thing that's dedicated to additional growth was due to additional growth was the addition of the extra shift for fire EMS.
Fire's final, how we permanent
That's the only thing that was directly related to growth.
I'm going to get confused here. As I leave it to you now for y'all to discuss that part about who's really paying for what, but like I said, my main point is I do not want to have increased taxes to pay for infrastructure for people who are moving in here. They're the ones that need it, not me. Keep in mind, you can always write another check and earmark it where you want it to go, and he'll be glad to cash it. If you say, okay, I'm fine with putting it in the general revenue, you write him a check and he'll stick it in general revenue. I don't know if I understand the point you're making. You're okay paying more taxes, so if you are, you can simply write him a check. I'm okay paying more taxes where you want to earmark it. But I'm okay paying for taxes that give me something back.
Sewer is ran as an enterprise fund, just like solid waste. It doesn't take outside revenue into it.
And if you're not using it, you're not paying for it.
Just like the building department.
And I brought this up for y'all to discuss because I brought forward all the knowledge I know. So, hey, thank you for participating.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was under the impression from the last meeting that we were raising the sewage fee to have the coverage so we could borrow the money to fill the build a new sewage treatment plant. And
But as a bonus, we can now replace
that's a infrastructure like we're spending $33 million. I can't
The increase-
that the people that are here now need $33 million worth of infrastructure.
So we're not gonna let anybody else come down here? Over here? Up here?
That's-
Away from here?
That's not the issue. The issue is who's paying for it. Okay.
Okay.
Here's what this will do, is the study was set out to where it will cover the existing debt, the existing coverage on our existing debt. Moving forward with growth, as we keep that going forward, as Randy was saying, what will happen, or Commissioner Merritt, was we'll use that funding for replacement of lift stations, which we have 90 of, which is
Not been
insane.
doing. We've not
Which we haven't. But as we continue to grow, that coverage will cover the future coverage as well. So that's the way it is set up to work. And we'll continue to put more money up into the coverage as we continue to grow.
There's no money to pay to fix or replace the 30, 40-year-old lift stations in Panacea that have grinding pumps, and when they break down, that sewer goes straight out to the bay.
And we were
I
doing
love
that.
our environment, so let's get those lift stations fixed.
We were doing that. We were spending back. That was when everything got messed up with ESG, and we got all that fund straightened out, and then we did have that money, so this allows us to do that.
And also, David, I feel like we've mentioned this 4 times, but this also has to do with we weren't doing the loan correctly for X amount of years.
Exactly, and we also were flush with money at that time because
So it didn't matter.
yeah.
And another key point is that the amount of money the county was allocating for sewer operations was artificially low. It was subsidized basically by the road department. And
That's when the ESG.
I did it when I was here. And that's what the county wanted us to do. And they had money in road, but they didn't
I
have sewer.
recognize that historically ESG was charging us for one bill, and most of it was going to the sewage plant and not to the roads, and so we fixed that problem. My concern is that we're going to spend $33 million, and it's mostly for new growth. And a lot of the people that are here aren't really interested in new growth. They like some growth, but not the weird
boom that we're having, okay, and it reduces their quality of life, and they don't want to subsidize it. And as far as I can see is that we're going to be subsidizing a lot of growth because we're going to use BP money, okay, to pay for these things, and BP money can be used for amenities as well as this.
You do agree that your monthly sewer bill is for operations and for repairs of lift stations, not for new growth?
Now, if you choose not to use BP money, everyone that becomes a sewer customer between now and in the future, their bills will go up to around $65 to $75 a month. So will other people pay? Old folk, even if the first customer that was on our sewer system would have to pay that.
The poor people have to pay this?
That's right. Everybody would have to pay.
Everybody has to pay because our access fee is large.
No, it would, because then all of a sudden we borrow more money if we don't use the BP dollars.
And surely the new people are the only ones responsible, because if someone's been connected to it for 20 years, and things have to be replaced. They have to be upgraded. I'm talking about repairs, you know, Ralph. I'm only talking about what we're building to handle the new growth, and that should be on the backs of the new
Access fees.
Okay,
That's where it is.
access fees and whatever happens, and that's, I don't see where an impact fee. You can call it, I don't care what you call it. The cool thing about that, compared to impact fees, is only the people that are using it are paying it, you know?
Well, that's what
Everybody that builds a house, correct? My only concern is that we're going to use BP money, which we could use to build parks down, or new access to the Gulf, things that would improve current citizens' quality of life who experience the BP problem, okay? And we're using that money to subsidize the new development.
Just like we're using our revenue stabilization to just talk about.
So we've got like 5 minutes left.
Unhindered.
Sheriff, constitutionals, members of the public, anybody want to squeeze in the last few minutes? Everybody good?
Oh, my goodness.
Come on down.
Greg, I just can't.
Do we have enough
Greg, you won the election. It's over.
You don't need this much exposure anymore.
I want to analyze the conversation you just had in a different way. Whether you agree with it or not, and we've had this conversation 1,000 times, we're going to spend $33 million on capital infrastructure for sewer. 20 of that, approximately, is going to be grant-related, BP money or elsewhere. So the county is going to have to borrow $10 million for the final portion of that. That's how the access fee was calculated based on the study, and that's why it only went up $200. If you didn't take any grant money, the access fee would go high to pay for all 30 million, which is the point you're making. Here's the problem. Now you have to charge the every month sewer fee, your sewer operating revenues. Your average citizen now has to have a debt service coverage to cover 30 million and not 10. And that's what David was saying. So now instead of the bill going up 15%, it shoots to almost $70 on average to cover debt service for 30 million and not 10 million. Does that make sense? It does, and I thought this was about...
So you're actually shifting
We're actually doing
the
exactly.
30 million is shifting onto the people who are already here through debt service coverage instead of, does that make sense?
We're doing them a favor by using the BP money.
You're actually doing your average citizen a favor by lowering their monthly bill by using $20 million of grant money wherever. If we collect enough money from our access fees to pay that fee, couldn't we rebate back to those customers the amount that they paid in that's over that? Because what we collected from access fees. I don't know the answer to that.
We got 2 minutes.
Everybody get with adjourning?
Good conversation.
Stand adjourned. Meeting will start
In 2